you and your family and your efforts and your work and your contributions make you important to all of us as a congregation. Two men were stranded on a desert island. One man was pacing back and forth and just worried and scared, while the other one sat back and relaxed underneath the tree, was absolutely calm and enjoying the weather. And the man who was worried said, "Aren't you afraid that we will die here on this desert island?" The other man says, "No, not at all." "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, I make $100,000 a week, and I tithe 10% faithfully of my salary to my church. I have no doubt my preacher will find me." Preachers have taught and taught and taught and taught on this subject. I've taught on this subject. And I want to tell you that it is important that you have a head knowledge of this subject. You do. Mark is a great one. Mark chapter 10, 11, and 12. Great place to get some real head knowledge. John Arbasano, you probably don't know who he is. I've been a fan of his since I was probably 15, but he's gone on now, I believe. But he had 7 commandments of stewardship, and those of them up there, you can read them for yourself. Your riches can be a curse and not always a blessing. That's found in Mark 10, 23 through 27. You can not outgive God. That's Mark 10, 28 through 30. You are expected to multiply. God expects that. These are biblical truths. If you steal from God, it's serious business. So if you keep back part, it's not safe. You can lose your stewardship. That's taught. You are to pay obligations to God just as you're to pay your taxes. That's taught. And your greatest blessing comes from giving anyway, even when it hurts. That's when you really feel the blessing. But that's just head knowledge. Bassanio then goes on to tell why he understands that giving isn't really a head knowledge thing. He said he was at home. He's a preacher now. He's at home, studying at home one day. And all of a sudden, his daughter comes in. His daughter's name was Melody. She was 5 years old at the time. And she says, "Dad, I want a dollhouse. Would you be willing to make me a dollhouse?" And his dad said, "Sure. Yeah, I'll do that for you." Promised to build her a dollhouse, and she ran out. Then he glanced out his study window, and he saw his little daughter, Melody, with her arms filled with dishes, with toys, with dolls, and she made a trip. She came back in, made another trip, came back in, and she just kept doing it. She was piling up a pile out in the yard. Finally, he asked his wife, "What's Melody doing?" And his wife said, "Oh, you promised to build her a dollhouse, and she believes you. She's just getting ready for it." And that hit him like a truck hit him. He threw aside the book that he'd been reading he thought was so important. He just chucked it aside, quickly ran to a lumber yard, came back, started building her a dollhouse. Somebody asked him, "Well, why did you do that so quickly?" He said, "You may think it's because I wanted to. No. Because her daddy gave his word and she believed it, and nothing could keep him from that." What he discovered is giving is not a head thing. It's a heart thing. And if you're only in the head space when it comes to the subject of giving, and it's what you've been taught, and you think you know the inside and out on giving, no, that's not giving. Giving is a heart thing. That text we read earlier clearly teaches that. We'll come back to that in a moment. But now, stewardship and giving is more than a head thing. It is a heart thing. And over again, we have examples of this in the world we live in. Time magazine wrote this: there is a positive association between helping others and life expectancy. Helping others reduces stress. Studies have shown that older people who are generous tend to have better health. So if you're not in good health, think about that. The Heart Math Institute stated, when you are altruistic, lending a helping hand, your oxytocin levels go up, which helps relieve your stress. So it's a real thing. It really does make you live longer. It's not a joke. It's not something a preacher says. But this is still just head knowledge. The Ascent said, generous people were almost 3 times as likely to report being happy every day than less generous people. The Gallup poll of 136 countries said this: people who donate to charity in the past month reported greater satisfaction with life. This relationship emerges in poor and rich countries alike. So it is true for us all. It affects us. When our heart's engaged and we give, it affects our heart in a positive way. My brother, you don't know him. My brother, if you saw him, you'd say he looks a lot like you. He's just a lot older. Anyway, say that because I like to say that. My brother used to sell cars. He didn't just sell cars. He sold cars for, 30 years at least. And without doubt, every month, he was the most successful car salesman on the lot. He never missed it. And he told me something about selling cars. He told me several things about selling cars, and I'm not going to get into all of it, but let me just give you one. He said people don't buy cars because they need them. It's a heart decision. You walk in there and you feel it. You just feel it. Said they get a smell for it, and it makes them feel good, whatever. It's a heart thing. It's not a money thing. If you're buying a car because it's a money thing, then your heart's not in it. But that's okay. You'll enjoy the car just the same. But that's the way we do it. Most of the things that we do that really matter to us in a strange way comes from deep down within. It's a heart thing. And this text that we just read a moment ago is connected to the New Testament in a way. I don't know if you've seen it before. What we're going to do is I want to walk you through, and because some people seem to think the Old Testament system of giving was different from the New Testament. And they like to think that because then maybe they're not as obligated to give. Right? It'd be a lot easier if I just give whatever I want now. They had a percentage they had to give, and I can just do whatever I want. I want to challenge you on that because the truth is that both are about the heart. That's what it's about. So I want to walk you through. I want you to see how the heart is connected to giving, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So if your heart's not in your giving and you're just doing it as a number thing and you're just doing it as a math thing, you're not where you need to be yet. Number 1, stewardship is giving from a kindful heart. And yes, that is a word. I didn't think it was a word, but it is a word. How about that? It's an interesting word, kindful. You know what it means. It means to be full of kindness. It is a real word. Let's read the scriptures together. Old Testament. If there's among you a poor man of your brethren within any of the gates in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not, listen to this, not harden your heart or shut your hand from your poor brother. You see, immediately giving is only done right when our heart's not hard, but when it's kind. 1 John 3, verse 17, New Testament. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? It's a heart thing. Number 2, stewardship is giving from a helpful heart, not just a kind heart, but a heart that wants to help. Deuteronomy 15:8. But you shall open your hand wide to him and willingly lend him sufficient for his need, whatever he needs. He wants to help. Galatians 2 verse 10, New Testament. They desired only that we should remember the poor, the very thing which I also was eager to do. I just want to help. I want to do it. Number 3, stewardship is given from a merciful heart. Deuteronomy, again, the Old Testament, what did the law teach? Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart. You can have a wicked thought in your heart about giving. Yes. Saying the 7th year, he's talking about forgiving people's debt every 7 years. The 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and your eye be evil against your brother. That's when you look down on a poor person or someone who doesn't have what you have, doesn't have the education you have, doesn't have the things you have, and you think you're better than them, and you look down on them. That's an evil eye, and it makes your whole soul evil. You hear me? That's what Jesus teaches. Matthew chapter 6, it means your soul is full of darkness when you do that. That's deadly. That's deadly. That'll destroy you. But listen now. And your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing. And he cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin. He comes and said, could you loan me? No. New Testament, Matthew 20, verse 15. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye evil because I'm good? You remember the guys lined up early in the morning, went to work for him, promised him a denarii. Guy about 11 o'clock in the morning, promised him a denarii. About 12 o'clock, promised him a denarii. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, going to give you a denarii at the end of the day. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, going to give you a denarii at the end of the day. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just before work stops, just an hour, I'm going to give you a denarii. At the end of the day, he gives them all the same amount of money. And the ones that came first and worked all day long says, it's not right. Listen to what the master says. Is your eye evil because I'm good? Are you mad because I was kind to these people? Are you mad because I was kind? In Matthew 6 and verse 23, it says, if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. I just wanted to read that just in case you thought I was kidding a minute ago. It's serious business. We need to have a merciful heart. Stewardship is giving from a cheerful heart. If you're not getting this, this is all about your heart. Are you listening to me? This is not about giving today. This is about a heart. You think I'm preaching about giving. I'm not preaching about giving. I'm preaching about your heart. You need to have a kind heart, a helpful heart, a merciful heart. And then stewardship is giving from a cheerful heart. You need to have a cheerful heart. Old Testament, Deuteronomy 15, verse 10, still in that text that was read a moment ago. You shall surely give to him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give to him. Because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and in all to which you put your hand. Maybe you're not doing as well as you should because you've been grieved when you did give. You following it? You were grieved about it? I did it, but I don't want to give that. I should have kept it because it didn't do you any good anyway. New Testament, 2 Corinthians 9, verse 7. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity. Well, I just have to. For God loves a cheerful giver. Why does God love a cheerful giver? Because God is a cheerful giver. That's why he loves that. So a cheerful heart. Some folks walk around like this all the time. Find something wrong with everything that's going on. And so whenever the church does something, I'll find something wrong with that. You know, folks, if you're like that, it's kind of hard not to find something wrong with you. Number next. Stewardship is giving from a hopeful heart. What do I mean by that? Look at verse 11. This is what Jesus quotes, by the way, in the New Testament when he says it. This is the text he's referring to. For the poor will never cease. You remember him saying something like that? The poor will never cease from the land. Now listen to me. That may not mean what you think it means, that a poor person that's a poor person will always be a poor person. That's not what he says. What he's saying is there will always be poor people. That will never go away. One of the reasons is because you need to learn how to be kind. Poor will never cease from the land. Therefore, I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor and your needy in your land. Why would you do that if they're always going to be poor? Because you are hopeful that that one won't stay poor. Mark chapter 14, verses 6 through 9. I'll just read verse 7. It says, for you have the poor with you always. This is Jesus. And wherever you wish, you may do them good. So you do them good. You do help. You can help. But me, you do not have always. I'm not always going to be here. You can do something nice for me. I'm going to go soon. Wouldn't you love to have had a chance to do something nice for Jesus? You do. Because when you do it to the least of these, my brothers, you do it to me. You do. Hopeful heart. That might actually make a difference. Number 6. Stewardship is giving from a bountiful heart. We all need to have a bountiful heart. The Old Testament, Deuteronomy 15, verses 12 through 14. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you, obviously in terrible debt, sold to you, and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. Don't keep your brother in debt always. By the way, if you loan something to somebody, and he's a brother or sister here, at some point you got to let him go. Some point. Can't keep that over his head forever. And sometimes they pay it off and you still haven't let it go. You got to let it go sometime. Verse 13. And when we send him away free from you, you shall not let him go away empty-handed. So, wait a second. He owed you money and he finally paid it off and he's going free, but you aren't to let him go free. You're supposed to give you something now. This is the guy who owed you money? That's right. And then you're going to help him even more? That's right. That's like he's getting the interest. That's right. Because he helped you. Because he helped you too. You shall supply him liberally, in verse 14. You shall supply him liberally from your flock. You mean give you some of my animals? I'm going to give you some of my animals. From your threshing floor, I'm not going to give you some of the food that we're raising here for my family. And from your winepress, I'm not going to give you some of the wine. We're not going to do that. From what the Lord has blessed you with, you shall give to him. Bountiful heart. Does he deserve the bounty? Absolutely not. No. New Testament. 2 Corinthians 9, verses 6 and 11. But this I say, he who sows sparingly, that is, helps or does good or gives to the church, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. By the way, that's in the Bible. So you do get blessed when you give. And he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. I want to reap bountifully, don't you? I want to reap bountifully. While you are enriched in every way for all liberality, verse 11 says. So I'm just suggesting to you, it's not about the amount, it's not about the numbers, it's not about the facts, it's not about the figures, it's about the bountiful heart. Number next, stewardship is giving from a grateful heart. Look at verse 15, Deuteronomy. This is the Old Testament teaching. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. By the way, and just about every one of us have ancestors who were slaves. If you know anything about Roman history, just about everybody. In fact, over 60% of the population of the city of Rome itself was slaves. They just didn't allow them to wear clothing that represented slavery, because if they did, they knew there'd be more than them and they'd beat them up and take everything they had. So you couldn't wear special clothing. You shall remember that that's where you get Czechoslovakia, right? It's where all the slaves ended up going, is up a little bit north of when they rebelled. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Don't forget that. Therefore, I command you this thing today. Hey, I'm not a slave today, are you? Been redeemed. Amen. You need to remember that. Why do you need to remember that? Well, it changes your attitude. You learn to be grateful. You forget what people have done for you. You forget what God has done for you, and you get mean and grubby with all the stuff you have. Have you forgotten that you barely made ends meet when you first got married? Have you forgotten? Have you forgotten how hard it's been? Romans 15, verse 27. It pleased them indeed, and they are their debtors. For if the Gentiles have been partakers of their spiritual things, by the way, their duty is also to minister to them in material things. The very fact that the Jews, listen to me on this, you may not like this, the very fact that the Jews paid the way, we actually owe them a little bit. Maybe quit talking bad about Jews, amen. Without them, we wouldn't be. Whatever you think of them today. So this is the lesson. Stewardship is giving, but stewardship is giving from the heart. A kindful heart, a helpful heart, a merciful heart, a cheerful heart, a hopeful heart, a bountiful heart, a grateful heart. See, giving is the theme of the Old Testament, from the heart. Giving is the theme of the New Testament, from the heart. And I'm going to tell you something. After this life is over, and by the way, it's coming quick. After this life is over and you're standing or kneeling in the presence of the Lord God, I think we're going to be heart sore. Why? After this life is over, I'm thinking of me now, maybe not you. I think I'm going to wish I'd done more. I'm answering for what I did or did not do. What do you think? I think I'm going to be thinking, man, I wish I'd have done that. I wish my heart had been in that. I wish I'd helped that. Why didn't I speak to? I want to recommend a film that I don't want you kids to go see. Okay? I don't think it's a good kid movie. In fact, I'm not even sure every adult here should see it. It's not that kind of movie. It's from a few years ago, Schindler's List. It's based upon a true story of a German industrialist named Oskar Schindler. This really happened. Oskar Schindler was a rich man at the beginning of the war. Then he learned of what was happening to the Jews who were being taken on trains to Auschwitz. He learned that during the war. So he wasn't really doing this at the beginning. He wasn't always a giver. Schindler found out what was happening to all the Jews at Auschwitz, and he began to systematically try to save as many Jews as he could. And the way he did it is he had a factory. He built things, and he built armaments. He built war stuff. He was wealthy. That wasn't all he did, but he built a lot of things. So what he did is he approached the German command, and he offered money to get the Jews who were going to be killed anyway to come and work in his factory for free, and they would be a part of the military machine. And it all sounds like too good to be true to the Germans who want this to turn the way it was happening. And so by buying the Jews back from that, he could deliberately, and they did, sabotage much of the ammunition even that were produced by the factory. Not all of it, otherwise they'd not have gotten away with it. But he went from wealthy to basically bankrupt by the end of the war, because he spent all of his money buying Jews out to save their life, to keep them from being killed. At the end of the war, there's a little part of the movie, and this is the part of the movie I call your attention to. It's at midnight. The Germans have surrendered. Schindler met some of his workers at midnight because he set them all free. They could go. It's an emotional scene. Schindler saying goodbye to his financial manager, who's one of the key actors in the movie, who had handled the plant for him, a good and trusted friend by that point. They embraced, and Schindler's sobbing. I could have done more, he says. He looks at his car. He says, why did I save this? I could have bought 10 Jews with this. He looked at a few things he had in the office. He says, this would have saved another. Why didn't I do more? If we give from the heart, our giving will even surprise us. And what it will really surprise us is what it does to us. Why we need to learn this. The heart change that happens. What a great surprise we'll have seeing our change because we gave. Allow your heart to lead you in your giving. Don't allow your numbers. Don't allow your intelligence. If you allow your intelligence, if you allow your numbers, if you allow that to be the whole and only thing that matters here, it will not change you, and you might even be more proud than ever. Oh, we've got some good givers that really would be better almost if they quit giving, because it's not from the heart. And until it starts coming from here, like everything else we are supposedly doing in worship. You see, we think it's all about how great thou art. It's got to be so beautiful. Away with that. We think that it's all about the sound, about the beauty. We think it's all about how well worded he did the Lord's Supper. How wonderful the giving guy did. How much that was so interesting. That little story Rex told at the end of the sermon. Away with that. What matters is whether or not when you come here, God is touching your heart and you're letting it happen. If you're not attaching to God when you're here, you're wasting your time. This is not affecting you. It only affects you when it begins to hit the heart. So when you give from the heart. You'll change yourself. That's another way of changing the world. Think about it, especially next week.